Hi everybody, welcome to Create with Katie. Today we are going to do a napkin journal in my 9x12 Canson Mixed Media art journal. Let's get started. So this napkin is called Deborah's Garden, and this is where I started my creative process today. Now sometimes I create a background and then look through my napkins for a focal that will go, but with this one I've had this napkin sitting on my desk for well over a month. I love the colors, but it was very busy and I wasn't sure how to use it, but today I looked at it and inspiration struck. Now, like I said, this napkin is fairly busy and I'm looking at parts that I can take out, things that I don't like or don't want to have on this particular page. So I know this part on the left hand side, I don't like it. Not for this page. So I'm going to cut it out. I will save this. It'll be all kept in my filing system with the napkins. Now this still seems a little bit busy to me. So if I take that out, so I'm just going to water cut elements out. And by water cut, I mean I just take my liner brush, as you see me doing here. I get a little bit of water on it, run it over the napkin, and then just pull the napkin apart. This gives you a rough edge that disappears when you decoupage it down. Now, just for as a reminder, all the napkins typically have 3 layers, and I've taken off the 2 excess white layers before I'm doing this water cutting. So we have that part and we can have this part. This is going to give me more open space, which is going to allow me to create background with pattern and texture. These 2 lupins in the middle, I don't think I'm going to use. So I'm going to have that on the one side. Oh, I could move that over there. No. Oh. And this is the way I play, and I decide what composition I want. Now that I have a fairly good idea of what part of this napkin that I want to use, I am just going to cut off any of the excess napkin. In this case, it's white, so it would pretty closely just disappear into the background. So I wouldn't have to go so close. But if it was gray or some other color, you would want to go fairly close. As I said, this napkin comes from NinnysNapkins.com. It's called Deborah's Garden. And many of the stencils that you're going to see me using from the Crafters Workshop can also be purchased there. There's a link and coupon code in the description box below. Now, there was some yellow gold in that napkin, and for the background, I'm thinking I want to play that up. I want to play up kind of a vintage feel to it. So I grabbed this old music sheet. It's faded with time that I picked up from a thrift shop for $1, so that's a great place to get old book pages and old music sheets that are already so wonderfully aged. And I'm just gluing them down. I've ripped them apart. I'm gluing them down. Now the final page, you still see this music peeking through. It's pushed back because there's going to be more and more layers, but it's still there, as well as the texture that the collaging gives. I'm leaving the white areas where I'm going to decoupage the napkins down. I really don't want to put anything there. So this stencil is called Calm, and I'm doing it in yellow oxide, which is the color that was in the napkin. So remember I said I love this napkin and the colors in it, the violets, the deep violets, the plums, the golds, and orange. I'm going to use those same colors in my background so that everything works cohesively. I really like how this stencil looks, and it's breaking up the music paper. And I like how that yellow really goes well with the yellow that's in the irises that's in the napkin. Now some of this I got a little carried away, so I'm just knocking it back because I don't want this to peek through underneath my flowers. I'm just putting a coat of gesso, just knocking it back, making it disappear. I could have glued the napkin down already and avoided this, but then you have to work around the napkin unless you want to you run the risk of getting the stenciling on top of the napkin. So whichever way works best for you is the way that you should go. Here I'm just adding a little bit more gesso. Remember, I'm building layers in this background. Now, in there, the one plant, and we're going to take a close look, kind of looks like this stencil. This is another new for summer 2022 called Knitted Stitch, also from the Crafters Workshop, and I'm using the pink that's down in the napkin. There's the flower that kind of has a similar look or feel to the Knitted Stitch stencil. And I'm using that same pink color, bringing whatever's in the napkin into the background. Now you might be thinking, oh, those colors, you're putting too much, it's too busy in the background. And you would be right. But remember, these are layers, and I am going to show a technique here in a minute where we're going to push back these layers so it doesn't compete with the focal image. So the focal image is the strongest element on the page. Here I'm using the Knitted Stitch stencil, and I'm adding some of the green. Also in the napkin, right? That color's in there. So we've got the pink, the yellow oxide, the green, and now all those colors are also in the background. Now, I talked about how I don't want the focal image to have to compete with the background. So now I'm getting some white gesso on my brayer, and I'm brayering right over top of all those colored layers that I put. This is knocking it back, pushing it back, so it's not so much forward, but all those layers, all the stenciling do show. Here I'm using unbleached titanium as well, and then I'm going back to white. This is just building layers, and brayering is a great way, vertically and horizontally, to build layers, to push back something that you already have, and it also adds some wonderful texture to your page. So I'm giving this a dry, and I wanted to add some script, and I'm using my blending brush, and this art is stencil from the Crafters Workshop. And I'm using the stencil for the script instead of a stamp because I don't have a stamp that has this scale of script. Now in the original napkin, there was some script in the white background, and I wanted to duplicate that. I liked how that looked, but I wanted more of it in my background. I'm using archival ink, and I'm using the blending brush to push through the stencil. And I'm just I want some of this script all over, but not really right underneath the napkin. And the vintage background is coming along quite nicely. Now, I really like the yellow oxide with that calm stencil that I had in one of the first layers. Here's the calm stencil. So I'm grabbing that yellow oxide, and I'm going to place this on top. So I've got it in the background, but I want it to have a little more of a presence. But before I do that, I've decided I'm going to glue down the napkins, and I'm putting a layer of fluid medium, matte medium, sorry, And then I'm putting some on top to seal the napkin. When you do this, the colors get brighter. You can see the iris on the left that I haven't glued down yet is duller. And as soon as I put the matte medium on, it brightens. So when you're working with napkins, you can expect that to mostly happen. So I've glued this all down. And I'll make sure that this is completely dry before I move to the next step. I wanted to add some more flowers to the background, so I grabbed this Petal Splash stencil, and I've mixed some deep violet and purple, and I'm just adding these flowers to the background. Now, if you're thinking this has really made it into a hot mess, you're not wrong. It's very forward. But I'm not done. Remember, layers. You're going to build layers. You put something there, then you put something on top. Here's that calm stencil. And I'm going to put some of that yellow oxide on top. I want that to have the largest presence in the background. Something about those circular, rounded shapes seems to have calmed down everything in that background. Now I want my focal image to be the strongest element on the page, so it pops. So I am taking some of my acrylic paint, watering it down somewhat, and painting it over top. So I'm putting yellow oxide where I see yellow oxide, deep violet where I see the violet color. I'm finding a blue in my stash to go with that other iris, and so on. Just look at your colors and find something. Then I'm adding some highlights with some white gesso. Kind of gives it a whole painterly effect. Here I'm adding the blue. I'm just deepening the colors. And as I do this, you can see that the focal image, the flowers, is coming more forward than the background. That's where I want your eye to go. But I also know I'm far from done on this page, and adding all these little things is the secret. Now I'm adding a little bit of a whitewash of white gesso that I've thinned. I want to knock that background back even more. I want the focal image to come out more. Just darkening up the greens. And I'm mixing Hooker's green with the yellow oxide. It kind of tones it down, gives me the right tone on this page. I still want that background knocked back even more, so I'm taking a makeup sponge, adding some white gesso on top, and I just keep knocking back that background with another layer. So it's a bit of a dance. I put some on, take some off, and you can see how that focal image is becoming the most forward thing. You can still see everything we've stenciled. You can still see the music pages. You can still see the texture from brayering. It's all there, and it's all added to the yumminess that is our background. I looked for a sentiment, and I ended up going to my Grateful, Thankful, Bless sentiment pack, which is available at NinnysNapkins as a digital download, and I'm gluing it down. I've separated it just to fit my page. Just adding more highlights, touching up. This is how, by changing, you can change the color here a little bit, change the intensities, add some highlights. This is making it your own, so that even though you're using a napkin, it won't look identical to somebody else that's using the same napkin on the page. You've added your own flair to it. I grabbed my woodless charcoal pencil, but I could have just as easily grabbed my General's charcoal pencil or Stabilo All pencil. I am edging the page with this, and that's, instead of doing this other shading technique that I often do, I chose this because this leads more to a vintage, aged feel. And then I'm using that same charcoal, although I could have grabbed my General's charcoal, and I'm just making some sketchy lines over top of the napkin. And I'm not going quite as fast as the video you're seeing, but I do go quite quickly. I don't try to overthink it. I'm not even trying to be so exactly precise. But you'll notice that these black sketchy lines really make the focal image pop. That in combination with the wash of color that we did brings it forward. And it makes it my own, because the original napkin didn't have black sketch lines on it. Just adding a little bit of shading with my angle brush, my black acrylic paint, just on a few of the flowers and in parts of it. And just be advised, if you do go with any wet medium on top of the charcoal, it will activate a little bit. So I've got the acrylic paint, but I'm also activating and moving around some of that charcoal that I put on. And I'm really liking the effect that it is giving me. Now I need some splatter. So I'm splattering with some gold paint, and then I'm going to splatter with some black as well. And I pre-mix my paint. I thin it down for the splatters because I do quite a few pages, and it's just easy enough for me to have some at the ready. I thought I was done. In fact, I took pictures and everything, and then I decided I'm going to add a lace embellishment across the top, and I'm using this crochet lace stencil from the Crafter's Workshop with black acrylic paint. And I love the detailing. This adds to that vintage feel. And again, this is one of the newest stencils that TCW has added. And there's just, I don't know, 5 or 6 different lace patterns on this stencil. So there it is, crochet lace. I think I'll be using that one a lot. I'm thinking I could put it underneath the sentiment. I'm going to have to save that idea for another page. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment in the description or in the comment section below. Give me a thumbs up. Share this video with your creative friends. Until next time, go get creative.